Hi, my name is Benjamin, and today I'm going to show you how to do pagination in ReaLearn. That means doing different things with your controller depending on which page is active. ReaLearn doesn't have a dedicated pagination feature, but no worries, it has something much better. It's called Conditional Activation. That's a more universal concept that you can use for all kinds of stuff, including pagination. I'm going to show you this feature by using a Stream Deck controller. But the Stream Deck is just an example. It will work the same way with MIDI devices, OSC devices, or the computer keyboard. And best of all, you can do it with any controller. The controller doesn't need to support bangs or pages by itself. If your controller has such a feature, you can forget about it. ReaLearn's conditional activation is much more powerful. Okay, let's start. I want those two lower buttons of the Stream Deck to switch between pages. At first, I connect the Stream Deck to my ReaLearn unit by using the input menu. In the next step, I'm going to create a few mappings for the Stream Deck buttons. Those are the mappings that later are going to appear on the first page. ReaLearn's Learn Many function makes this quite easy. I press the first Stream Deck button and map it to some arbitrary target. Which target doesn't matter for this tutorial. I just mapped it to Reaper's Transport Stop button. I continue to do this for all buttons except the two last ones, which I'm going to use for navigating between pages. That's it. I end the Learn Many session by closing its window. For better orientation, it would be nice if we could actually see something on the Stream Deck buttons. This can be easily achieved by entering a default text for each button. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. Okay, mappings 1 to 13 are the ones that I want to have on page 1. Later we will create more mappings that will appear on page 2. But let's set up the pagination first. For this, I'm going to move all mappings that you see here into its own mapping group. Press Menu, move List Mappings to Group, New Group. And I'm going to enter the page name, page 0. I'm sorry, I'm a programmer. Programmers always start counting from 0 instead of 1. Perfect. Now all of our mappings are in the group page 0. And I'm going to add another group for the next page right away. Page 1. As you can see, switching between those groups has no effect on the controller. Groups in ReaLearn are just a tool to organize your mappings, that's all. By default, all mappings in all groups are active at the same time. What we need to do is to tell each group when it should be active and when it should be inactive. We want any group to be active when its corresponding page is active. We first need to teach ReaLearn what a page is. We do that by taking one of the freely assignable parameters of this compartment and giving it a descriptive name, for example, page. Press Menu, Compartment Parameters, and I choose parameter 1. We are going to need only one parameter for this purpose. I enter the parameter name, page. And in the field value count, I enter the number of pages that we want to have. In my case, 3. As expected, switching between groups still doesn't do anything. That's what we're going to change in the next step. I opened the group page 0 and press its Edit button. Here I can define under which condition this group should be active. By default, it's always active. But we want it to be only active when the page parameter has the value 0. That's why we change the active condition from always to when bank selected. In the first menu, I select our newly introduced page parameter. In the second menu, I would select the desired value. It's the correct value already, 0. I do the same for group 2. But this time I choose parameter value 1. And why not? At this point I can also add the third group, giving it the name page 2. Remember, I wanted 3 pages in total. At this point our pagination mechanism is already active. We just can't see it yet because each parameter has by default the value 0. That's why we still see page 0 at the moment. So the next step is to make it possible to change the page parameter value. We do that by adding a mapping. I connect it to the Stream Deck button that we want to use to navigate to the next page. And now it's finally time to connect the dots. As a mapping target, I choose ReaLearn, set compartment parameter value. And I pick the parameter that I want to control. In our case, it's already pre-selected because it's the first parameter. Now I can change the page by using the slider, and as we can see, it finally works. The page 0 mappings disappear as soon as I switch to page 1 or 2. Good, now what happens when I press the button? As soon as I press it, it jumps to page 2. When I release it, it jumps back to page 0. In order to turn this into a next button, I need to switch the absolute mode to incremental button. Now it finally works as we want it. I press it and it navigates to page 1. I press it again and it navigates to page 2. And if I enable the wrap checkbox, it will jump back to page 0 as soon as I press the button again. Okay, jumping to the next page works now. Great. In order to create the other navigation button, we duplicate the existing mapping. Then, all we need to do is to enable the reverse checkbox. At this point, the screen recording lags a bit, sorry. But in some seconds, it should be fine again. Now we can switch back and forth. All that's left to do now is to create a few mappings for page 1. So we open the corresponding group and switch the device page so that we can see what we are doing. Again, we use the Learn Many button. And enter a few labels. At this point I will also fix the mapping names, otherwise it's confusing. We are finished with our setup. We have 2 pages and we can switch among them. The last thing I want to show you is how to add an additional way to turn pages. I connected a MIDI Fighter Twister controller and want to use the bottom right encoder to turn pages. I choose the MIDI fighter twister in the input and output section and add a new mapping. Oh, I forgot to load the controller preset for the MIDI fighter twister. It's always better to do that if I have one. And I learn the source once again. Now I choose the target, ReaLearn set compartment parameter value. And it works. The encoder is a bit sensitive, so I can reduce the speed slider a little bit. And now it's fine. And for a bit more convenience, I can enable the wrap checkbox again. As we can see, when I change the page on one device, it changes everywhere. That's because the page is represented as one parameter, so there will never be syncing issues. Conditional activation can be used for scenarios that are much more complex than this one. The activation condition menu contains more options than just when bank is selected. But more about that in another tutorial. That's it for today. See you next time.